and they're going to find out feeling. Talking about imposter feelings is a start, but you can't share your way out of imposter syndrome.
Where you worry that your success isn't real or that you've just been lucky. One study suggests that up to 70% of the population experiences imposter syndrome at some point in their career.
Imposter syndrome is created in childhood when our parents deny our authentic self. They do this by shaming us and shaming that authentic self because they're trying to control us into becoming what they want. When a person is experiencing imposter syndrome, they're having a massive shame attack. We're experiencing what is called carried shame.
Imposter syndrome doesn't care about the truth. It doesn't matter whether you have the title, whether you have years of experience, whether everybody around you is telling you how amazing you are. The reality is, imposter syndrome, in fact, it's even more likely to crop up the more evidence you have around you of how great and how deserving you are. It doesn't care about the fact. It's only interested in reminding you and making you feel like a fraud.
I can't do that. I don't dare take a risk. I'm afraid to try that. I can't imagine what else I would be doing. I don't really want to go to that party, but I feel obligated. Living very small lives and letting their limiting beliefs really control the way that they live and behave.
The first myth that people who have imposter syndrome believe is that it's a personal flaw and it's just them. Nobody else, because nobody else seems to have it, it's just them. And for that reason, they keep it a secret.
The fear of being found out makes us small, makes us invisible, leads us to the wrong decisions, fight or flight. The fear of being found out is caused by voices from the past, by wisdom from the past.
Hello everybody, today is the 7th of June and I am so excited because we have with us the amazing Dr. Victor Mosconi. Today is his day. He's our first speaker for the Impostor Syndrome Summit and I'm really excited. I'm going to introduce him and then bring him on. We can hear from him. Dr. Victor Mosconi is a PhD in psychology with a master's in psychology of leadership development and coaching and industrial organizational psychology, and is the founder of Impostor Solution Coach. Through his lifelong experience with imposter syndrome, his psychology background, and coaching skills, Victor specializes in supporting up-and-coming women leaders and entrepreneurs in overcoming their self-doubt and imposter thoughts to develop a mindset of self-appreciation and strong self-belief. So, Dr. Victor, welcome. Thank you so much for coming today. Is there anything I have missed in that introduction?
No, thank you very much. I'm very happy to be here. That was a wonderful introduction. That really kind of speaks to what I experienced and how I've learned through my own experiences on being able to then bring what I've learned, not just from the educational aspect, but personal experience and knowing what I've been able to use for myself to help overcome a lot of my own imposter feelings and thoughts to start breaking out of it and living my own authentic life.
That's amazing. So I'll go straight into the questions. Tell us your story about your experience with imposter syndrome.
It's a long journey where many people will often experience imposter syndrome when they're changing jobs or going through some new development in their life. This is something that I have experienced all of my life. I grew up always feeling like I was never good enough. And if you've done any research or going through any aspects of imposter syndrome, a lot of it can come from your childhood. If you're criticized, judged for who you are, that could be a part of it. Part of my own experience was always having to put everybody else before myself. and putting myself secondary. So as that grew over time, it became this aspect that, well, I wasn't as good as everybody else. At the same time, for instance, with grades, it would be, I could going to school, I could get A's, B's, and a C, and the focus was never on the A's or the B's, but on the C. And even if I could bring that particular C up to a higher grade, the focus was then on the next lower grade, not what I'm growing and achieving, but what I'm not doing. So again, it was this constant aspect of me just never being good enough. And it carried over farther into my life, where no matter what I accomplished, it wasn't because I could do it. It's because I got lucky. I skated through. Somebody else helped me out. It was them. They're the ones that really kind of carried everything through. And as things continued into my marriage as well, to the point where things got really just dark for me, and I just didn't feel like I was worth anything anymore. And I didn't feel like my life had any true value beyond just doing chores for everybody else, that I really didn't have any kind of true worth. But that's because I could never see it within myself. Eventually things got to a point where I was really ready to give up, but I decided to seek out a therapist. And in doing so, the therapist helped me to kind of reframe things and realize that what I was feeling, what I was thinking, what I was experiencing wasn't because of me. It wasn't because of who I am. It was because of my previous experiences and how they framed my thoughts and how they helped to create this negative and toxic mindset of me not believing in myself. And through that, I had to start going through a process of really rebuilding myself, understanding what are things that I liked and being okay with it, and recognizing my own qualities and my own skills and realizing that they are good and I am good for who I am, and looking at my achievements and understanding that I could do these things and it was because of me, but it was me having to rebuild all of this for myself. Again, as I was going through therapy, I didn't understand what imposter syndrome was. We didn't even name it at that point, for me anyways. When I went back to school and I was getting my master's in leadership development and coaching, I'm reading through different case studies of leaders, of different kinds of, presidents of companies, CEOs, vice presidents, people of the board, all that thing. And they're talking about their experiences and how they're having imposter syndrome. And they're talking about how they felt like they weren't good enough and what it was tied to. And as I'm reading, I'm going, oh my gosh, that's me. That's me. This isn't just a me thing. I thought this was only me. Everybody else was better than I was anyways. And I started realizing that this is a big issue. This is something that covers not just one or two people or people at a certain level. It's everybody. And as I learned more, I realized, okay, I'm learning how to actually overcome this for myself. I'm learning how to connect with myself. I want to bring this information, bring this awareness out to others.
Well, you've mentioned something very important. You've said that you suffered imposter syndrome, not just in your career, in your work, but even in your personal life. Mm-hmm. Could you tell us how imposter syndrome manifests itself in personal life, in things that are not work related?
Yes, and it's very much exactly like how it could be work related. If you're working on a project, for instance, you could be thinking, oh, I am not the right person for this project. I am not good enough to do this project. And as you're working on that project, you're going to possibly look at it like as you need to overwork it, or you need to be a perfectionist to show your worth in your abilities. Otherwise, you could be fired. Well, that same thing kind of comes across in a personal life where you feel like no matter what you're doing, it's not good enough, whether it's cooking a meal. Oh, it could be maybe the flavor's a little off. Oh, I'm not good enough at doing this. I should be better at what I'm doing. I'm not doing it well enough. Or it could be cleaning the house. And it could even get to the point where you're making decisions to buy a house or make a new life decision, whatever it might be, or even in a relationship where you feel you're not good enough for that person. And no matter what you do, instead of embracing and appreciating those moments, you're constantly questioning your own self and your own decisions and feeling like, let's say you go out and buy coffee for yourself and the other person. And as you've done so, you're on your way back, you're going, oh, I hope it's the right one. I hope they made it okay. Oh man, maybe I didn't ask the barista the right thing. Maybe I should have done this instead. Oh, what if it doesn't taste right? And then when you bring it back, let's say it doesn't taste just perfect. And you, instead of looking at, well, okay, I didn't make it. I wasn't the one who did it. I did my best. You take it on yourself like, oh, I should have tasted it beforehand. I should have checked it. I am not good enough at this. And I'm always making mistakes and I'm not good enough for this person. as you continually feel this way and think about this and overthink about this and over stress and worry about it, it becomes a bigger and bigger burden, because every single thing you do will have that impact. Every decision you make, you go out to buy a piece of clothing for your loved one, you're questioning, is this going to be okay? Are they going to like it? Is the color going to be right? Is it going to be a good fit? Oh, if it's not, then I shouldn't have done this. It shouldn't have been me. Where you get to the point where you no longer believe in your own choices, you don't believe that you can make a proper decision, and you will then get to a point where you don't want to voice your own thoughts or opinion on anything because you don't feel you're going to be right on anything. And over time, your own self-belief begins to shrink more and more. You don't feel like you have much worth or value, which creates more anxiety and will lead to depression, to the point where you just feel like, well, if I have no value, I have no worth, I'm not good for anything, why do I need to be here?
It sounds like every single new doubt begets another one, and it turns into a whirlwind or a whirlpool. You just start rotating and sinking deeper the more you pile on the doubt on yourself. I have a question from one of our experts to you. And the only reason I'm asking it now is because I realize that it's very close to your story. The question is from Caroline Flanagan. She will be our final speaker since you're the first. She's asking you a question. And the question is, was there a pivotal moment or experience that changed your relationship with imposter syndrome? If so, what was it?
Ooh, that's a really good question. I would have to probably reflect back to while I was going through my master's and end up reading those case studies of other people experiencing this and it being named imposter syndrome. Because at that moment, that's when I recognized that what I was experiencing was not just me. What I was experiencing affected others and had a huge impact, not just with them, let's say personally, as I thought. I thought it was just me, my own personal life, nothing, nobody or anywhere else is it connected. But understanding and recognizing at that moment on how powerful this is and how it can affect not just my own, of course, personal life, but it can affect people in their own business life. It can affect people trying to build and develop a business, a future for that matter. It's not just about here and now, it's about what's gone on in your past and developing and moving or trying to move forward in your future. And at that, I think that probably was that pivotal moment where it changed my view on it, where I understood that this was a bigger, broader, more complex construct and had such huge impact on so many different levels.
You have been working on imposter syndrome with your clients, and you have a quiz that measures imposter syndrome strength.
Yes.
Please tell us, what are the parameters it measures and why?
It measures parameters on basically on you looking at your own self and how you interact with others. For instance, one of the questions relates to when you're looking at your own achievements, do you attribute it to yourself, or is it to something else or someone else? Or do you often look at other people and feel that they're are better or have more skills or knowledge than you do? And it's kind of, it looks at both things. So it's looking at the person themselves who's taking the quiz and asking them to kind of, what is their perception beyond themselves comparatively? Which is a really big thing with imposter syndrome. It's all based on comparison, because you're looking at oftentimes how you compare yourself to everybody else around you, whether it is in a personal life or in a workplace setting. And by setting up this quiz in this fashion, and it's on a scale of 1 to 10, if I'm correct, just on how I kind of structured this one, it's to kind of help give people an understanding as to where they fall within that scale. Whether it's really low, it's like, no, I feel really good about myself. I know that when I accomplish a goal, if I'm working on it on my own, for instance, this is their mental process, that it's because that I put the effort, the time into it. I was the one growing through the process. Or if it's like, no, it's like, if it happened, it wasn't because of me. No matter how much I was working on it, I know, that wasn't my possibility. So it's the results end up giving them a chance to just kind of give an idea as to how much they're actually putting their qualities, their worth on other people and other things as opposed to on themselves.
Okay. In case you're watching and you would like to comment, please feel free to post a comment and a question so that Dr. Victor can answer you directly. I think that would be an amazing interaction. What is your process for getting people to learn to own their success? Because imposter syndrome doesn't really allow you to own your success. You always feel like it's somebody else's fault that I'm successful. It was an accident. It was just by chance. It was just by luck. What's your process of getting people to own their success?
Process is a wonderful word to use because, yes, it's a process. It's not this 3-step action and poof, it's gone and I'm good and everything's fine. It really is a process where you really have to go back more and start understanding what are your own qualities, what are your own characteristics, what makes you you. And that can be a really big challenge because you can ask somebody, especially if they're experiencing high imposter syndrome, like, what are some of your qualities? And often you'll get the first answer is like, well, I don't really have any. Because you have to kind of break it down and get them to start noticing what are they good at? What do they excel in? And it could be not something very direct, like, oh, I can type up, an 80-page paper in 2 hours. But it could be something on when they communicate with others, how they're able to help explain information well. And it's getting them to really kind of break those things down. Once you're able to do that, that's kind of a foundation. Then it's a matter of taking it to the next step and looking at those achievements and successes, whatever they might be. Let's say it is, earning a degree. It's, again, even if you're going through school, you're earning a degree or earning a promotion, for instance, it could be that thought of, well, I don't know, I just lucked out, or the professor made it easy, or my boss just figured, okay, well, you might be okay to do it. It's getting them to go, okay, look, if these are your qualities, how do these qualities apply to this position or this degree? Or taking it to a different step, it could be, okay, what did you have to do to earn this degree? And getting people to kind of frame it that way, because instead of looking at themselves, they're looking at it from an external point of view. So they might be looking at it going, okay, well, I had to work really hard in reading all the documents, and I had to make sure that I understood what was going through it, and I had to make sure that as I was writing, I would go back, I would edit, I would rewrite. And at those points, it's a matter of then helping them to see, look at these qualities and things that you're learning. And by the end of it, you can even talk to them. It's like, okay, what challenges did you experience? How did you overcome the challenges? And again, it's taking these steps, process. It is a very slow process in the beginning to get people to understand and appreciate and acknowledge their own qualities, characters, abilities, and how they're able to apply that to their own successes. And and again, it's getting them to look at themselves and seeing this and not comparing it to somebody else.
In your experience, are there many types of imposter syndrome? And how many exist that you would say these are the top 3 or top 2?
That's a little tough because it really kind of depends on the circumstance and the situation. I would probably have to say, though, that kind of the aspect of being the perfectionist or soloist kind of vibe together, where you feel like you have to be the one to do it. If you have to ask for help, then you're not good enough. And if it's not the best quality ever, you're not good enough. And they kind of will intertwine with each other. You can separate them out, but they can definitely intertwine because you often feel like you're the one that has to do it. You can't ask for help, and you have to be able to make this the best product, the best whatever it might be ever. So I would have to probably say those probably would be the 2. Because those kind of really kind of hit in a variety of different ways throughout many other experiences with imposter syndrome.
Okay. And what are some of the common misconceptions about imposter syndrome that you would like to debunk?
Excellent. Okay, so first off, even though it goes by the name imposter syndrome, it is not a syndrome. It is not a disorder. It is not a disease. when it was first identified in the 70s, it was called imposter phenomenon because it was focused on the experiences initially that the women that they were studying were going through to create this negative mindset. And that's kind of what it still goes through, where it's based on the experience, past experience, present experiences that are creating this negative or toxic mindset that's really restrictive. And so you have to understand that it's not a disease, it's not a disorder, it's not diagnosable, like, oh, okay, this is a problem with you. It's an understanding that this is the way your mind is shifting the information. So that would be one of them. Another is that it's very complex. A lot of people will talk about it. They'll say, oh, well, it's just about not, self-doubt or self-confidence. You just need more confidence. You need to get over the self-doubt and you'll be fine. Again, there's a lot of complexities to it. Yes, those are parts of it without a doubt. But it's that connection of self-belief, of believing in yourself, in your own qualities, not just about, oh, yeah, I'm good at this, but why are you good at this? And also then separating yourself from those negative voices and thoughts that are in your head. So there's a lot of levels and it takes time to break it down. That would be the third part too, is that besides it not being simple, it takes time. If you only experience this when you change jobs or you start some new development, usually it can take a few weeks to a couple of months before you overcome it and you feel like, okay, I got this, I got the groove going, I'm okay. But if this is something that's been lifelong, whether it's been 20 years, 30 years, 50 years, 60 years, whatever it might be, to break those thoughts, those negative thoughts and processes, mental processes down, it's going to take time, weeks, months, even years. And at the same point, there are a lot of things out there that will say, oh, you could break it down and never have to worry about it again. That's not true. You're going to come across other experiences that are either similar to what you had before in the past or new experiences that have ties to it, where you're going to have to be able to reach back in, use these new skills and techniques you've developed to help break down the imposter syndrome and build up your own self-belief and put those back into action. So you can definitely work to reduce the thoughts and even quiet them completely, but from time to time they may pop up and you'll have to know that, okay, you know what, I can do this, I've done this before, I can overcome this again.
So what are the long-term effects of imposter syndrome if you don't do anything about it and you're suffering from the imposter phenomena? What exactly could happen?
A variety of things, starting out with paralysis of your mind. You won't be able to make choices. You'll start deferring to everybody else because you don't feel confident in yourself to actually make that choice, those decisions. So you'll always put it off to somebody else. At the same time, you will not take the steps to allow yourself to grow into new positions and new opportunities because of the fear of failure or the fear of success. It can be a little combination of both. And so you'll restrict your own growth and direction because it's a safe zone. You can stay safely in this one area as opposed to going further. Also, you'll end up having more risk aversion, which kind of ties into like staying in the safe zone. Instead of taking those challenges, looking for new and developing opportunities, you'll end up saying like stay away from any kind of risk. Also with that too, more of a fixed mindset. You're going to see that everything is really just black and white, cut in stone, and this is how it is. I'm not good enough. I will never be anything better. It's really absolutes is how your mind will truly become in this fashion and stay this way if you don't work through changes. And with all of those, it's going to add a lot more stress and anxiety and possible depression, which will have not only effect on your own mental state, but your physical health as well. And it has huge impacts on personal life, obviously, because it can definitely cause problems within a relationship because of your own ways of looking at things, as well as causing problems with your own career, keeping you very restricted so you don't really get a chance to grow and flourish.
If in case you're watching and whether you're watching live or the replay, please make sure that you subscribe to our channel and check out the description of this video because there are links to how you can get to Dr. Victor Mosconi. Make sure you follow his page and check out what he has to offer. He has amazing content. So make sure you like, subscribe, follow, share, so that this conversation can keep going outside of this summit. So, Dr. Victor, what are the mental health effects of imposter syndrome? You've talked about mental paralysis. Are there other mental health effects?
Yeah, so as earlier, along with, of course, anxiety, stress, depression, those are definitely mental health effects, to the point where it will also, where it's kind of a mental and physical aspect. It can connect in with procrastination, where you just feel like you can't work on something. It becomes too big, too much for you to handle. The decision-making aspects are too much for you to deal with. So you will push things off, to the point then that you may end up overworking to get the job done, which creates a lot of physical and emotional and psychological exhaustion, because you have to push yourself to such extremes to get the job done. And when you push yourself that far, it really creates more difficulty for you. In fact, there is the imposter cycle, which is created by Dr. Clance in the 70s, or no, actually in the 80s, sorry. And it starts out where, for instance, it's a job situation, you start out with a task, and already going into the task, you already have anxiety and worry. As you start working through that task, you end up hitting one of two possibilities. One would be procrastination, the other would be overworking. Because of the imposter syndrome, you're either feeling like I have to be a perfectionist and really, really do this to a full extent. So you're going to go above and beyond, which means hours, working what you're doing with it, pushing everything else off, pushing your own health off, possibly even for like eating, for instance, or the procrastination where you're so hit by the paralysis of not being able to get the job done that it will affect you mentally of being able to move forward. Eventually, you will be able to get that job done and push yourself through. At the end, though, when people are like, wow, this is a really great project, you did a great job, you don't see it. You're like, oh, I just lucked out. It was just by chance. It wasn't me. But I'm like, oh, I'm just glad it's done. And hopefully nobody will notice that I just was able to make it through, and they're not going to see me as a fraud. So you're still carrying all this guilt and negativity and anxiety with you that you carry on to your next task. And so it's this cycle, because you keep going around it, you're not breaking out of it. Each time your anxiety builds, your worry builds, your overworking, your paralysis builds, and it becomes heavier and heavier on you, that it's more restrictive on your own thinking abilities, on your own choices, where it starts to deteriorate what you can think of, how you see things, how you make a decision, what you even do for your own physical health, like I said, with eating, and it slowly starts to break down your own mental capacities of making sound decisions for you.
We have a question from Instagram by a lady called Simona, and her question is a bit complex. She's basically saying that she has someone in her life who has been diagnosed with depression and anxiety, and she believes he's a covert narcissist. So she wants to know, is it possible that a narcissist can have imposter syndrome? That's number one. Number two, someone who has Asperger's, can they also have imposter syndrome? What is the correlation between these conditions?
Okay, going with the narcissist first. Yes, there are possibilities that it could connect with imposter syndrome, because with narcissism, there's often this insecurity of yourself. You don't really believe in yourself. And so because of that, you're looking to project on others to make you feel better. So you put other people down to make yourself feel better. So there can be a connection. However, keep in mind, most of the time, many that actually experience imposter syndrome are more focused on their own insecurities and low self-belief, but they don't want the attention, because at the same time, by putting somebody else down, it makes them feel even worse, because their own insecurities, they're very sensitive in aspects of other feelings of people. And so they're more about trying to protect themselves from acknowledgement. And by putting others down, as a narcissist would, for one example, it would often bring more conflict, more attention, and they often don't like it. Yet, yes, there are aspects where a narcissist could be experiencing aspects of imposter syndrome as well. But I would say that probably would be a portion of their narcissism and not what's fully driving it. As for Asperger's,
Yes.
as it's also, or it's kind of been shifted as far as I know, to more of just being known as autism. Yes. Those that are autistic or experience Asperger's definitely can experience imposter syndrome, because a lot of the times with that, when they're growing up, just using that as an example, they're often looked down on. They're often seen that they're not good enough compared to others because of how their neurodivergent process and thinking goes. It's often very different. Their own different aspects of how they connect to things in their world is not seen as normal or as the norm of society. And so there can be a lot of judgment and criticism thrown at them. And with that, yes, they can definitely develop an imposter syndrome thought process, because of course they're looking at and comparing themselves to everybody else, and everybody else is like this and they seem to be doing great and I can't seem to do that. And again, they're not focusing on what are their qualities, what are they really good at, what are their specialties in their own life, because there's always this comparison. So definitely somebody with Asperger's or who is autistic definitely can experience imposter syndrome, and it can have a very profound effect on them.
Okay. I hope that that answers Simone's question. Simone, in case you're watching and you have any other question, please feel free to ask. Tell us about your coaching programs, your company, and how people can get to work with you.
Oh, okay, wonderful. Well, to get to work with me very directly, it's going to my website at victormoss.com, and I know you put the link up as you said, is a great way to do so. There's a link, there's several different points on the page where you can message me and be able to talk with me through there. Also seeing things through Instagram, where I post up little videos of different things that I connect with imposter syndrome and often experiences, how to overcome it. That's another way as well. Going through the coaching process itself, there's not a one size fits all, because even though there are broad general connections with imposter syndrome, you really have to look to each person as to what they're experiencing, what have their experiences been, how are things affecting them now, for me to really kind of understand what steps to take. Yes, as I stated earlier too, there's often the underlining aspect of like, okay, looking at your own qualities, your own characteristics, and applying that to your achievements and success. But I don't just kind of like start throwing things out like, okay, checklist 1, 2, and 3, because I need to know what's going on with that person. So when I work with anybody, I always tailor it to what they need, what they want, and what's going to support them the best. It's not me dictating what we're going to do. It's them letting me know where they're at and where they want to go, and us working together to develop a plan moving forward.
All right. I think that you're right. Customized, tailor-made to a person's situation. Mm-hmm. So in case you're watching this even on the replay, check out our description for this video and also the first comment that's going to be on this video, because you're going to have all of the links to be able to get in contact with Dr. Mosconi. And unfortunately, we are coming to the end. This is my last question. And it is your opportunity to ask the next speaker, the next expert who's going to be coming on tomorrow. He is Kenny Wise, an author, speaker, coach, teacher, and healer. So what question do you have for him on imposter syndrome?
Okay, so my question for Kenny would be, what does he feel would be one of the biggest barriers to people overcoming imposter syndrome? That would be my question. Looking at like what's like one of the biggest struggles that people come up against that makes it difficult for them to overcome it.
All right, that question will be going straight to him. Thank you so much, Dr. Mosconi. I don't know if there's anything else you would like to add that maybe we haven't touched on.
See, that's a big, broad question, because as we were talking, imposter syndrome is so complex that you could literally talk about it for hours, hitting on multiple different areas of it. I think the biggest thing that I would want to leave with, though, is just the understanding that no matter what you've been experiencing, no matter how negative you may think about yourself, that you cannot overcome this, or it's just you, or it makes you look bad, it doesn't. You can overcome this. You can find the steps to break it down, to build up your own self-belief. And it's not just because I'm saying it, because I've been able to do so, because I understand you can look at it, especially when you're experiencing imposter syndrome, yeah, well, you could do it, but that's just you, that's not me. I've had that, I've been there, and I've worked with many others that have been that way too. And they realize that as they start getting that and seeing their worth and value, it opens up a whole new world and direction for them. So please know that you can take the steps to overcome it and actually develop the life that you want to live and truly feel authentic in your own life.
All right. You are not alone. You can develop everything that you need and live your authentic life. Thank you so much for today. Thank you so much for showing up. To all the people who tuned in and the people who asked questions, thank you so much. Tomorrow we will be talking to Kenny White, and we hope to see you there. Make sure that you share any comments you have also on social media and tag Dr. Mosconi at Pick the Conversation and Imposter Syndrome. So, bye-bye.